Hi, welcome back to the workshop where I'm building this custom Firebird guitar. And this time we're going to be making a start on the finishing process by performing a couple of little repairs that need doing and then getting a start on the sanding and the rest of the body prep. Okay, so we've got this all stripped down again. And the first thing I'm going to do is just plug the kind of extra little holes that have been drilled through for the wiring that we don't need anymore. Now this isn't just a cosmetic thing. I'm going to be shielding all of this cavity, and having those additional holes will make it a little bit more difficult. So we're going to get rid of those. And to do that, I'm going to need some 6mm mahogany dowels. Now, obviously that's not the kind of thing everyone has lying around in their workshop, so I'm going to have to make some. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. So I can just kind of roughly push those into place, mark them up. And just get them trimmed down. And we'll just use a little dab of tight bond on those. Just to hold them in place. And they're both a little bit tight, which is kind of what we want, but they're going to need a little bit of persuasion. So I'll just leave that glue to dry, and then we can come back and trim these off in a little while. So while that's happening, we'll head up to the headstock end and we'll look at that filling around the logo that just needs a little bit of cleaning up. And as you can probably see here, there's just some like patchiness to this filling that I've done, and all that is where there's been voids in the initial fill and it's just left it not very nice. So what I'm gonna have to do is get the Dremel with the precision router base out again and just kind of clean out some of those areas so that we can refill them. I'm going to take as little material as possible out so that we haven't got a deep void to fill like we did last time, so hopefully we won't get these cavities again. Okay, so that's kind of filled again. I'm just going to leave that a little while before I attempt to rub it down, but it seems to have filled quite nicely. So with that done, we can hopefully get back to these dowels, which should be dry by now. Now this is going to be a little bit awkward, but I'm just going to clean the bulk of it off with a little flush cut saw, and then we can just clean that up with a chisel maybe. Okay, so that looks a bit of a mess, but I'm pretty sure if we give that a quick rub down, It'll come up nice again. I'm not convinced I will have got all the filling done in the first pass, but if I've got the bulk of it done, we can just go again and get it cleaned up nicely. Okay, that had me a little bit worried at first because there was a real kind of light line where I'd filled around that C-section. But as I rubbed it down and got through the top layer, it kind of blended back in again. There is a little bit of a dark kind of shadow around this to a certain extent, but I'm pretty sure once we get the rest of this headstock grain filled and over lacquered, that will look absolutely fine and you won't be able to see it at all. On the subject of grain filling, if anyone's got any bright ideas of how you go about grain filling Wengate, I'd be very pleased to hear them. I have heard super glue, but I'm not sure if that would kind of lose this grain pattern. I'll have to do some experiments on some scrap and see what I can do. Okay, so with that done, that's really the last of the major jobs that I need to do. So next up, there's a good look around this to see if there's any remaining imperfections that need sorting out, and then we're on to the sanding. I've had a good look at this and kind of found a few little bits where it does need some attention, but mainly it's just a case of giving it a good sand down, cleaning it up, make sure any marks are off it, any little dings and scrapes etc. are sorted out. You might have noticed that I haven't put a round over on this body at any stage, and it is quite awkward because of the way that this kind of steps up and down. So I'm not actually going to use a router to put a round over on. I'm just going to hand sand in a little bit of a radius around these corners, and I think that will be enough. From what I've seen of Firebirds, they haven't got like a really pronounced round over anyway. But I have found one little problem that will draw your attention to, and this is one of the drawbacks of using reclaimed materials, because every now and again when you use reclaimed materials you find something like this, and what I think this is a nail hole. So it looks like there's either two nail holes or the nail's kind of gone in and out. There's not a huge amount I can do with that. I can fill it and try and make it look a little bit better, which is probably what I will do, but for reasons that will become apparent at a later stage, I'm actually going to leave it for the time being until we're doing the grain filling. I'm not going to give too much away, but there is a possibility that when I'm doing the grain filling, we might actually be able to mask that a lot better than we would just by filling it. So I'm going to leave that for the time being. I'll get everything else sanded up how we need it and take it from there, really. Okay, so we'll start the sanding in earnest, and even though I routed around the edge of this body, it is quite rough in a few places. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a kind of sanding block, this is quite a firm rubber one, and some rough paper. This is 60 grit, and I'm just going to smooth out all of the inconsistencies around the perimeter of the guitar, and then once I've done that, I'll then start sanding in this little radius that I'm going to put on the edge. Well, that's the sides done and that profile rubbed in. Feels a lot nicer now. You can probably see that edge is a lot softer than it was before we started, so that's all good. So with that done, I'm going to then get this onto the bench and start to address the flat bits on the front and the back. Okay, so that's kind of most of the back sanded now. Actually coming up really, really nice. Very, very pleased with the way this is turning out. I've still got an absolute shed load of sanding to do, and I understand it's not particularly interesting to watch. So I'm going to carry on with this and continue to sand it off camera. I'm going to be back in a couple of days' time with the next episode, where we will be taking what will be the finished sanded guitar, and we'll start getting it grain filled and prepped up ready for spraying. Those of you who have watched a few of my builds might be familiar with the technique I use for grain filling. You can forget about that on this build. I'm going to be trying a new technique. So make sure you're getting all the notifications so you don't miss on that episode. As always, like if you've liked, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.